I think it'd be useful for us to examine some state and local laws to see if they are designed in such a way that they may encourage the kinds of altercations and confrontations and tragedies that we saw in the Florida case, rather than diffuse potential altercations.
President Obama yesterday speaking out on the George Zimmerman verdict, following Attorney General Eric Holder's remarks at the NAACP annual convention earlier this week.
We must stand our ground to ensure that our laws reduce violence and take a hard look at laws that contribute to more violence than they prevent.
With me, Virginia Congressman and member of the Congressional Black Caucus, Bobby Scott from Virginia Beach, and outside counsel to the NRA, Stephen Halbrook. Good evening, gentlemen. Congressman, I'll start with you. When the president decided to say what he said, that created somewhat a controversy, many people thinking that he was basically inflaming the upcoming protest, and some people thinking it was the exact moment for it to happen. What say you?
Well, there's going to be an ongoing protest because of the situation where a young man, obviously innocent, gets Skittles and iced tea, walking home, ends up dead. The question on these stand your ground laws is, as the Attorney General indicated, whether they add to violence or detract from violence.
Well
every state already has...
Congressman, let me interrupt you for a second. Are you and the president saying that the jury got it wrong here, that our jury system does not work?
No, the jury spoke, but the question is whether or not
the jury system work, Congressman?
It's the best we've got. Sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. Well, no, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. I mean, if you look at people being exonerated from death row by DNA evidence after the jury verdict of guilt and the imposition of death,
no, I'm talking
you can't
about
say
this
they
case,
always get it right. I mean, that's absolutely absurd to suggest.
I'm talking about this case. Stephen Halbrook, all right. What is the difference between stand your ground and self-defense? A lot of people don't understand that. You've written the book on this stuff.
Well, they're really part of the same thing. Notice the jury in Florida was instructed that you had a right to use deadly force if you reasonably feared death or imminent bodily injury. Whether we have stand your ground, like did you try to flee or something, was not in this case because there was no opportunity to flee. The stand your ground law basically says that if you're in your own home or you're in a place where you have a right to be and you have not started any kind of altercation, you can defend yourself. This is part of human rights. Martin Luther King talked about the right to self-defense with weapons being a moral right recognized in any society.
All right.
Ida Wells carried pistols for self-defense. Medgar Evers did the same.
Okay, but Congressman, I'm going to go back to you. Now, the Department of Justice is getting involved in a potential civil rights charge, a criminal civil rights charge. Do you believe that there is evidence of that based upon the sworn testimony that came out at the jury trial?
Well, the question is whether Trayvon Martin was profiled and pursued because of his race. That would constitute evidence of a hate crime, and that's what the investigation is already going. What happened after the assault? I mean, if you listen to the telephone calls,
I think the issue,
he was obviously felt he was under attack. At that point, a crime has been committed.
Okay,
what happens after that does not exonerate.
It's not whether he was racially profiled, it's whether he was killed as a result of the hatred or bias. It's not.
No, that's the murder charge.
Are you saying
that's a murder charge? He's been acquitted of murder. He's been acquitted of murder.
I understand
The question is whether or not he also committed a hate crime in an assault, chasing somebody down because of their race. You don't get exonerated from that crime because subsequent to that something else happens.
But so are you saying that he was chased down when just about all the witnesses said he was the one on top beating George Zimmerman, and Zimmerman's the one with the injuries?
Well, you're starting the clock at the fight. How'd you get there? And if you got there by virtue of Zimmerman tracking him down because of his race, profiling him because of race, ignoring the police admonition to stay in your car, and tracked him down,
But that was not
then a hate
against the
crime has
law,
been committed.
Congressman. It was not against the law for him to get out of his car.
And it's not against the law to get out of the car. It is against the law to track somebody down and put them in fear of their life.
Well, what evidence did you hear of that? Let me go to you, Steve Halbert. Talk to us about the issue of the president basically saying that if Trayvon had a gun, he could have shot Zimmerman.
The president made two remarks that were totally wrong in terms of what the law is in every state in the country, and including in the stand your ground states. One is that President Obama said, well, could Mr. Martin have used a gun and stood his ground and stayed on the sidewalk? Well, of course he could have, had he not engaged in behavior that the jury considered to be an assault. And secondly, he said that you've got, if he feared that he was being followed, could he use deadly force? Well, remember the jury instruction and the law is that you have to reasonably fear great bodily harm or death. Yeah. And of course, just a car being in the vicinity or somebody being out of their car, that's not a reasonable fear of bodily harm or death. So,
all right, gentlemen, we're coming up against a hard break here, but very quickly, the Attorney General saying he wants to change the laws in the individual states. What about federalism, state laws, Congressman?
Well, the question is what the stand your ground laws add to what's already self-defense. You have the right to use reasonable force, proportional force. The problem with the stand your ground laws is they invite vigilante and invite disproportional choice. And this is an interesting, this is an unusual case because you actually had witnesses. Usually you don't have any witnesses. You have a dead body and a story presented to a sympathetic jury.
Congressman
beyond a reasonable
Scott,
doubt.
Stephen Halbert, I got a hard break here. Thanks. Stay with us.